Okay, my friends, can I have your attention, please? Thank you, everyone. My name is Fitzgibbon. I'm the chair of the Australian Forest Products Association in Australia. For way of a bit of background, I'm also a member of Parliament, a former member of Parliament of Australia, a former Minister for Agriculture, Fisheries and Forestry in Australia. So that might explain my deep passion and commitment to the forestry sector. And today, very excitingly, before I go there, can I thank Longy Solar for their facilities and their lovely gift today for the panellists. And I thank my colleagues at the Australian Forest Products Association for their assistance both organising and participating in this event. AFPA for short, the Australian Forest Products Association, represents the whole value chain in the forestry sector in Australia, from forest fall right through to the final consumer product. And it's a great pleasure to be hosting so many wonderful panellists today. We have a range of people, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves fully because I'm very concerned about my pronunciation and ensuring that I get their organisations right. But it's suffice to say that we're going to hear from world farmers, the biggest pulp and paper, or one of the biggest pulp and paper producers in the world. We've got a renewable sector aspect, particularly from the UK, which is wonderful. And importantly for me, our young farmers, that is critical for our future. And we also have Natasha Sickman, my colleague from the Australian Forest Products Association, who will give you an Australian perspective. I think today what we're about is asking ourselves a few questions and drawing on the expertise and experience from each of the panellists. I think what we want to be exploring as we strive towards 1.5 degrees, the role historically or so far of the forest products sector, the forestry and forest products sector, and the role of our role in the bioeconomy, in particular biomass. We want to ask ourselves how well we are doing that, what proportion of the effort has that sector secured, where is it doing well, where is it not doing so well. For example, in Europe, biomass is doing very well in electricity generation and heating, right through, of course, to hydrogen. But in other parts of the world, including in Australia, it's not doing so well in our case, simply because a lot of the subsidies are going to other areas of renewables. And from my perspective, it's really, of course, important to focus on renewable electricity generation, but we can't meet our aspirations in decarbonisation doing just that alone. We have to be broad in our thinking and look into every innovation available to us as we march towards that quest to remain at 1.5 degrees. And whether that might be nuclear, whether it be carbon capture in the fossil fuel sector, whether it, of course, be more biomass, we have to be broad and open in our thinking, because if we don't take hold of every innovation, every possible way of decarbonising our economy, then I think we are going to fall short. So I'm going to ask the panellists to introduce themselves, and George, I'm going to start with you, please.
Thank you very much. Hi everybody, my name is George Lee. I'm from the Association for Renewable Energy and Clean Technology.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Fernando. I'm Chief Sustainability and Innovation Officer for Suzano in Brazil.
Hello, my name is Natasha Sickman. I'm currently CEO of the Australian Forest Products Association and also the Pharmaceuticals Manager.
Good morning everyone. I'm Dancham Siboran. I'm the representative of All Farmers Organization and also the Farmer Association, which is formerly United States. I'm from Brazil.
Hello Swanya, or in English it means hello everyone. I am Nurmordina and people call me Nina. I'm in here representing the National Forestry Student Association or ISA.
Now I'm going to ask each of the panellists to just make a short contribution before we go to a question and answer session, including, of course, questions from anyone who might have one from before. And George is a very popular man, I'm told, and he has to be elsewhere at a certain time. So I'm going to ask George to start and apologise for him in advance if he has to leave the conversation before we draw things to a close. So over to you, thanks, George.
Thank you very much, and I do apologize that I have to leave a bit earlier. However,
Am I in the way that slide's showing?
I think I need to so anyway, if you can't see the image clearly, like I said, I'm from the Association for Renewable Energy and Clean Technology in the UK. We are the largest renewable trade association that looking over all the renewable technologies. You can see from that picture, or you can't, that we arrange our job under 4 pillars: power and flexibility, transportation, circulatory bioresource, heat and cooling. With bioenergy or biomass that actually touch on all those 4 pillars. Obviously, there's a power generation perspective on all the wood waste and all the off-cut from the forestry management. And circulatory bioresources speaks for itself, including all the organic recycling. And part of the recycling is also the waste and different products that coming from the milling process. And then the other one, heat and cooling. Traditionally, wood is the, I guess, one of the first things that humans use to heat our places in different, well, in harsh conditions. And even in a modern day, a lot of people are still having the habit of using wood in, for example, in heating in the winter. One of our key things is to encourage people to use off-cut waste wood and those wood pellets that otherwise is going to waste, instead of using whole good quality timber for their heating resources. And transportation has slightly less to do with bioenergy or forestry, but if we need to deliver a 100% renewable energy system, then bioenergy or any of the off-cut or any of the I guess bioresource we can harvest and recycle from the forest will play a crucial part. Irina says the entire world, if we open up our demand on bioenergy, the supply is already exceeding whatever we can take for over about 20%. So there's no question that whether the resource is there or not. The question is how can we utilize it better, and how can we make sure that we tap into all the resources we have. So I want to talk about 4 main benefits about the using off-cut or having a sustainable management process for any wood production or forestry management. The first one is obviously sequestering carbon, which is what everybody's here with the entire conference is about. Everybody knows by growing any tree, any forest sequesters carbon already. And if we think about this, instead of just a natural system, but as a commodity or as a human-controlled environment, when you think about the vegetation always replace or renew themselves. So if we let any of the foliage, if we let any of the wood just rot in the forest without using them, the carbon that's previously sequestered in the solid form of wood will go back to the atmosphere. So essentially, the longer we can keep any of the carbon in a solid form in the forestry, in the wood product, the longer we'll be able to keep them away from the atmosphere. The second point is obviously reduce energy emission. We currently still use more than half of the global energy system on fossil fuel, which is a disaster. Everybody is very angry, at least in this venue. However, one of the things that REA is championing or promoting is all kind of resource or all kind of renewable energy needs to have a place in the future in a completely decarbonized net zero energy system. One of them is bioenergy, and a big part of bioenergy is any waste wood or any waste product or organic waste product from any type of forest. Obviously, UK is not the strongest country that's using bioenergy. However, bioenergy still constitutes about 13% of the entire energy production in the UK. And if you think about sustainable or renewable energy production, that number goes to about 33%. The third point I want to talk about is supporting local communities. Obviously, if we manage our forestry traditionally, it doesn't cost that much labor, it doesn't have that much, I guess, job creation properties. But if we're thinking about, besides logging and harvesting those good, firm, well, big wood, if I may say, for the traditional production, for example, construction, furniture making, or making them into different products, the leftovers will still require to build a supply chain to collect them, manage them, making sure they're all, making sure they're all sorted responsibly, and making sure they get to the place that can utilize them. The entire supply chain it's a completely new, untapped job market. So for anybody who's surrounding by a forest or who have access to tap into their forestry resource, that means they will create local jobs, local people by building supply chain, harvesting the wastewood, the foliage, or any of the offcut they can get their hands on. The last point, obviously, not the I've talked about in the supporting local community as well, because if we see this as an industry or a sub-industry, if we see all the offcut and waste from the forest as a type of resource that we want to manage, then we will put more resource into delivering the system, into researching about the limitation or ability of what those resources mean, and also we will probably create more, not just job opportunity, but people's understanding about this entire sector. The thing is, the one reason I leave it at the last is because we haven't been doing the research, or we haven't been seeing forestry management as I guess one of the crucial way to decarbonize our energy system. So we don't know anything. What's the important role they can provide? What's the important role they can give us? But the more we do, if we take them seriously, the more we can. The job perspective is also quite important because in the UK alone, the biomass sector has provided that over 500,000 jobs in 2001, and this year, by the end of 2032, in the next 9 years or so, this entire figure will go to at least over 120,000 people job created. And if the estimation is a bit more, audacious, we could potentially see the increase of job creation for about 300,000 different jobs. Next slide, please. This is a very brief introduction for what the forestry management or what the byproducts or the wastewood products that we can use from the forest into the energy system. Obviously, there's a lot of different things that we still don't know or to exploring. I'm gonna leave you with one example in my very short introduction period. Everybody knows hydrogen is one of the most hottest work. Like everybody's talking about hydrogen, the hydrogen economy, we can decarbonize transportation, but there is a link, a very strong link between the wastewood product and the sustainable management of forestry to hydrogen. Because once we harvest all the biomass or bio resources, we can use them to create green gas, biogas, and then biogas will become with carbon sequestration, obviously, will become one of the main sources to produce net zero hydrogen. And because one of the key reasons why the hydrogen economy is only on everybody's tongues, but not really in reality yet, is because the limited resource, the limited supply of clean net zero hydrogen. Because over 90% of the hydrogens we're using in the world of gray hydrogens are coming from fossil fuel industry. If we can start to harvest clean energy and harvest the resource from the forest, that means we will add the fuel into the hydrogen economy and making sure that the transition to the hydrogen economy, taking care of all form of resources and we don't waste it. I think that's me. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, George. It was not only comprehensive, but it was delivered with a great deal of expertise and enthusiasm. So we thank you very, very much. Okay. And you're off the hook with the questions, obviously. I'll email you questions if I have any tricky ones for you.
Our pavilion is like 3 floors down, and so if anybody wants to visit, please. Thank you.
Thank you, George, very much. Fernando, we go to you, and I'm very keen to hear what you've got to say. Obviously, Susano has been in this space for a long, long time, so you can give us a historical context, potentially. But I know you have very, very strong, or your company has very strong sustainability goals too, so we're very keen to hear what you have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Good afternoon, everyone. Once again, thanks for this opportunity because on behalf of Suzano, I'm honored to be here today to learn with you, to share some ideas about what we have done in Brazil during last 99 years. This is, we will celebrate 100 years next year. So it has been a great experience since the beginning, and I'd like to share some aspects of our company, of our work with you, and learn with you as well. First of all, I think it's important to emphasize, it's important to point out that what we do, it's not, in fact, it's not reforestation. Most of what we do today, it's farming, because we plant eucalyptus, and each plant that we harvest, we plant in advance, 6 years in advance. So this is the way we produce, and And of course, we have our planted areas and also our conserved areas, some native areas that we conserve. So we are the largest pulp producers in the hardwood pulp producers in the world, and we take care of 1.7 million hectares of planted eucalyptus farms, 1.7 million hectares of planted eucalyptus farms, and also 1 million hectares of conserved areas, native areas, in the three biomes that we have in Brazil, that we plant in Brazil. They are Cerrado, our savanna, Atlantic forest, and also Amazon. So this is the system that we have developed that we call mosaic. So we have the plantation to get the plantations together with the native areas preserved. And this is key for the equilibrium of the ecosystem that we have in Brazil. And our plantations are mostly on areas that were degraded in the past, mainly pasture land, and we have the opportunity to bring the green back to those areas. So this is the way that we produce. And of course, we look after of our native areas, protecting them against fires, illegal invasions, hunters, etc. So, and we also enrich those areas in the native areas that we have, working with communities, because we produce seedlings of native trees that we can enrich the areas that we have in this mosaic system. So it's important to understand that we use only eucalyptus, planted eucalyptus, to produce our pulp and paper products, and alongside the plantations we have 1 million hectares of conserved areas. And this mosaic system again brings the equilibrium that we need in terms of pest and disease control, because we have natural enemies, we have habitat for several animals living together with the planted areas and also with the native areas that we conserve. There is one important concept that I'd like to share with all of you. This concept that drives our business today is called innovability. We know that this word doesn't exist, but for us innovability is innovation at the service of sustainability. Because for us it's very clear that the solutions that we need to face the problems that we have in the world today need to we need to develop innovative solutions in order to scale up alternatives to solve the problems that we have in the planet today. I think we're facing the biggest war ever, and we have to collaborate, work together in order to deliver scalable solutions. I understand that there are several small solutions that are also important, but at the end of the day we need to collaborate between ourselves, governments, communities, startups, private sector, etc. We have to collaborate all together, integrating actions in a systemic view in order to deliver the solutions that we need. So, in my opinion, our planet is claiming for some help. We need to rethink the way we produce, the way we consume, the way we interact with natural resources. So this is a big challenge to all of us, and we need to go beyond the traditional models. This is the point. We need to go beyond the traditional models. And I'd like to speak also on behalf of our association in Brazil. It's similar to AFPA in Australia. It's a IBA. Yeah. So we are one of the 46 members of the Brazilian Association, and we recognize the importance, the role of our sector in order to deliver those scalable solutions. Our sector in Brazil has been developing serious R&Ds during the last 5 decades in order to go beyond the traditional models. And we are working hard in order to, beyond pulp and paper traditional products, also include some new bioproducts that can replace fossil materials that we have today in our daily lives. Just an example, at Suzano we have established a long-term commitment, we call commitments to renewing life. We have established a long-term commitment related to the production of these new products. We want to deliver until 2030 10 million tons of renewable materials to replace fossil materials that we have today. This, again, goes beyond pulp and paper traditional products. I'm talking about lignin, I'm talking about nanocellulose, textile coming from planted trees, and etc. So I think, again, if you work together, I'm pretty sure that we'll be able to revert the current situation in order to deliver a better world to the next generation. So I stop by here, and then we'll have time to talk more during the Q&A. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Fernando. Very comprehensive, as we would expect. And yes, we do know your friend, your association very, very well. We consider them great friends of ours. And you mentioned that word collaboration there, and of course we hear that word emerge or bubble to the top of the conversation all the time. It's very, very important. But we need collaboration with governments and within governments. And Natasha Sickman is not only the acting CEO of the Australian Forest Products Association, but she's also a former senior political staffer. She knows how the politicians think. So over to you, Natasha.
Yeah, thank you. And I think just following those two speeches, it ties in nicely with what I'm going to start with, which is really around the concept of that circular bioeconomy. When we think about that framework, it's quite new for policymakers. They don't really understand what it's going to take to transition to that low carbon bioeconomy. All of us together are going to have to put in a much greater effort to actually understand those nature-based solutions and the impact that we have on nature, but also why it's important that industries like ourselves exist in order to ensure that the landscape is properly managed. And with Susano's work and what have you, when you think about the trees being planted and that farming concept, that is what it is. It's that continual sustainable production systems that actually are going to ensure that we can transition to that low carbon bioeconomy, powered by nature essentially, which is really what we need to do. So I think in order to do that, this is why AFPA also decided that we really need to have these types of conversations at the COPs to ensure that we and policymakers can see what exactly is happening already in the system and get a better understanding of it. Because right now, there is a lot of focus on renewables and they are very important, no one's denying that. But it is this product that we produce that's also critically important. And it takes a long time to grow a tree to actually put it into the system for this circular bioeconomy to exist. And policymakers need to start thinking about that longer term certainty in policy that companies, farmers, landholders will need to have that confidence to actually build and provide the products that will be needed for the future of a low carbon bioeconomy. So I think when we think about what is needed, it really does come down to, for all of us to play a bigger role in understanding that terminology and definitions, what it actually means, and for us to start making this part of our normal narrative. It's not currently, and I think that more work will need to be done in that space. We also need to think about, when we think about emissions and those removals of emissions, right now we talk a lot about reducing emissions through new technologies, but also what are the current technologies that exist, such as carbon sequestration through trees. That already exists. That's a known technology. It has a really big impact. We have more production trees in the ground that are sustainably managed. We can actually, well, I'm not sure how far we can go, but I guess with the right will, it can be a very, very big number in sequestering more carbon and then transferring that stored carbon into the built environment. So part of the work that AFPA is doing is actually, I just wanted to touch base about some of the work that we're doing, is to develop a report for our government that's looking at the sector as a holistic narrative. So it's not just about the trees in the forest, it's actually about how those trees are managed, what happens to those products when we put them in the built environment, for instance, displacing plastics through pulp and paper products, those new innovations and technologies that we don't have right now, but that will come through the right focus. And then also, what happens at the end of life for our wood products? When we think about the circular bioeconomy, when we think about timber buildings, if a timber building, they can last for thousands of years, technically speaking. But if you do need to do something different with a timber building, that product should not go to landfill. That product should actually be put back into the system somehow, and that is where, when we think about that bioenergy, maybe that can play a bigger role in that space. And I just wanted to just end with just when anyway, when our first speaker was speaking, and he was talking about that we have enough of the product, and we think about, you know, the biomass in the forest, and we have enough. Currently, the World Bank has actually said that we will need, as we look to transition to this low carbon bioeconomy, that timber and fibre products are going to increase fourfold by 2050. We really do need to start thinking as a global society, where will that product come from? So that's where that policy certainty needs to be a little bit stronger, so that we can actually ensure that we have confidence about where these trees are going to be grown, who's going to grow them, how they're going to be managed, how the carbon market is going to work around them, and then ensuring that unintended consequences are not actually put forward, because we need that resource, and would that risk possibly, you know, putting more pressure on deforestation in its real form, where people are harvesting trees and not replanting them. So I think that's really critically important. And again, AFPA is really honoured to be hosting this today, to have this really important conversation.
Thanks, Natasha. George was a very glass half full sort of guy. You can see that. We're talking about forestry and the increasing role or need for more biomass in our bioeconomy. And I said that the Europeans are doing that very well, and I think that was reflected in George's contribution, but I can hear the frustration, cautious frustration in the voices of some of our panelists, which is something we will return to during our Q&A session. So I'm going to shift us over to you now from a farmer's perspective, or a farmer's perspective, and very interested in Mauritius itself and what stories or yarns you might be able to share from that part of the world.
Thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to talk. And as farmers, we are doing a lot of things. For example, we was doing before just like convention and then sustainable agriculture. But now the farmers is moving toward agroecological farming. So it is a new concept where there is 10 principles. And the 10 principle is taking all aspects we are talking. So there is the biodiversity, there is circular economic, there is also social, and all these things is taking into consideration. And the farmers is now in the way on the track. I know there is also, Nepal is doing the agroforestry there. So it's all these things is doing the farmers. In Mauritius, I have a farm myself, which is called an agroecological model farm. So in this farm, I have around 35 varieties of plants that we plant, and it's make it like a forest. And we have the biodiversity is coming, and we have also the renewable energy. So we are planting, but we are doing the renewable. I put the solar panel in the greenhouse, and we are doing the energy. So it came here. And also, when we talk about the agroecological, we are considering also the livestock also. So we have the animal. With this animal, when we produce, there is a cow dung, we can make the biogas. The chicken, we can make also energy with that. And all these things we are recycling. For example, we have banana trees. We cut the banana trees and we are making fibers for this. And if we can make clothes, we can make pack, and all these things we can renewable. So, and also when there is rainwater harvesting, all these things, there is also this the aspect of in agriculture, the aspect of teaching. So even we are teaching the person, the consumers must be sensitized and teach. I can say that the farmers is here from long time, is doing plantation and is producing. There is a lot of plants that can be produced energy. For example, in Mauritius, there is sugarcane plants. And sugarcane is, in Mauritius, we are doing with the the bagasse, we are doing the electricity. So, because Mauritius we have to import the petrol from outside. Then it's reduce the consumption of petrol, and we are doing this. And there is also that, just like in Brazil, there is big farm. beetroot. Beetroot you can get the energy, fuel energy, methanol, and also with bio, the sectors also we can get the petrol, methanol, and there is other things that also is that Mauritius is developing. We are going in the mostly because we have a lot of wind. We are in small island and we have the wind. So they will take this opportunity, the wind and the sun. So we have the wind turbine to produce electricity. Many farmers is putting in the farm to get their own wind turbine and to run the pump. And also there is the solar panel. There is all the farmers, the government is giving a lot of subsidies and money to that to give this solar panel, and we can produce electricity to run our farm at our farm. And even we are encouraging that when we harvest, because there is a lot of wastage when we harvest, and then the fruit is rotten before going to the market. So it can be stored in a cold storage running with solar panel. So all these things is we are doing, the farmers is doing in adapting this kind of technology and innovation. I think there is a lot of plant also that have to be to research. The research work should be there to have this farmers can go inside and doing planting in this sector. What the plants can produce energy also. I know there is a lot. There is plant also that take the carbon also. So with the farmers, we have the opportunity. We can plant, but we have to work together with research and innovation and technology so that we can implement and reduce the carbon emission and contribute in the climate change. And finally, I will say that we farmers are very keen to have the innovation, and we are producing a lot of foods to maintain the whole world to get the food, and it is important to get the support. And with the climate change, we are suffering a lot, and we are the one which are suffering mainly because there is other sides. We are even the forest. We need the forest because it's retain the water, and we need water, and it's have the forest have also it produce the microbes, and these microbes can use for us to plant. There is a lot of development is coming in the country, and this, for example, in Mauritius, when they're cutting the trees, and there's a lot of damages going there, and when there is heavy rainfall, it remove all our soil, topsoil, and we are suffering from that also. So there is a lot of things to have done within the government, and I think the fund also must become to farmers there's a lot of fund from the loss and damages. Now we hear, and we want the farmers also want to have this fund to us also, because we are also, there is the carbon market. We are talking about carbon market. We farmers can put this, must be facilitate us to get this access also. Then the farmers can be encouraged, and the youth can be entered in these sectors. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gantram. Again, very, very comprehensive, and we appreciate your contribution. I was particularly pleased to hear you talking a lot about agroforestry, or the integration between forestry and farming. It's certainly a very deep focus for us in Australia, and I'm sure elsewhere. In Australia in particular, there's a misplaced view that somehow farmers and foresters are in competition with one another, whether it be for water or for land, but this is untrue. And we're starting to prove now that everyone benefits from that integration. And for farmers, it means an income, both in carbon terms and of course product terms, but it's also good for their productivity, their profitability, their biodiversity, resistance against drought, you name it, shade for animals, animal welfare generally. So it's an exciting, not new area for us, but growing area for us, and it's nice to hear you talking about that. Now, when I was at COP27, I met these people from a wonderful organisation known as the International Forestry Students Association. I'm very happy to say that they now have also become good friends to AFPA in Australia, and I thank you, Gina, for being here to speak on their behalf today.
Yeah, thank you for this opportunity. I will represent IPSA here. Actually, I will talk based on my personal experience because I was participating in one of the workshops by the Italy Embassy and one of the youth organizer in Indonesia. It is Italy Irena Action for Climate Toolkit, or IAC. And they choose 50 young leaders to speak, to learn about the climate action toward the renewable energy. And surprisingly, I am the only one from forestry background in there. And for me, it's very fascinating because they mention it biomass and biodiversity loss, even though it's just a little bit. That's why I'm trying to learn more about what is the correlation of the renewable energy and biodiversity loss. And the concern that have been raised about the land use competition as a result of one of the co-firing biomass, it is renewable energy may reduce farmland and forest land, and that's why sustainable forest management is needed to avoid this. And however, scaling up renewable energy must balance and climate and biodiversity. The disruption must be minimized to prevent biodiversity loss. And the study that I found from Biodiversity Consultancy and WFF in 2023, it's about integrating energy and nature to address climate and biodiversity issues. The strategy for the government is the energy planning at national or regional level to identify energy saving and renewable energy resource, and invest in timely nature-sensitive mapping to force the industry to avoid the protected area, and also for the developer and investor, use biodiversity safeguard and environmental impact assessment to reduce impact and offset residual impacts for net positive results, and increase biodiversity, environmental, and social corporate disclosure and reporting. And also, based on my background in forest conservation, people may believe it was nothing to do with the renewable energy. However, based on my observation, when I visited a national park, I saw there's a lot of solar panel in there. And the forest conservation is really related to it because we need wildlife monitoring to prevent there is a conflict with animal when we try to setting up the solar panel, and even when we trying to create the geothermal energy and so on. And also at the end, it's about youth green jobs and future. And every stakeholder must invest and provide financial inclusion for youth to prepare for the green jobs, and they could invest in one, education for reskilling, upskilling, and upskilling, and two, high-level meeting involvement like in here in UNFCCC. And unfortunately, most of my friends they cannot attend UNFCCC, even though they have the funding, but they can have an access for that. And three, participate on research. And there is IPSA have the youth statement during the World Food Forum, and I'm trying to praise from that. To realize this vision and take the next step, multiple stakeholders should support and increase long-term collaboration and sustainable finance. Many youth organizations that have planned to establish their action. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Dina. It's very much appreciated. And it's always great to get that, not only younger perspective, but your representation is global, of course. So you have the opportunity to speak with members from many different countries, having different experiences, different challenges, and different opportunities. And can I say, something you touched on there reminded me that Fernando, when he spoke, was very quick up front to mention deforestation. To assure people that reputable companies like Fernando's and all those we represent are not responsible for deforestation. We follow sustainable practices, and in fact, we grow trees and replace, don't harvest trees, but replace trees. So can I ask the panelists whether they have a view, and in different jurisdictions, what our greatest challenges are in terms of dealing with the mythology perpetuated by those who would seek to shine the wrong light upon us as a sector, who don't understand we are sustainable, we are renewable, we are committed to the environment. It's a big problem for us in Australia, and I think it is demonstrated through some government policies which, from my perspective, see a lot of capital going to renewables projects, as important as they are. But of course, whether it be land or otherwise, or even controversy with land use conflict, there is only so much we can do in wind and solar. And we have to look beyond that to issues like biomass in that bioeconomy. So can I get a little bit of a feel from you in different countries as to how you're doing with what I'm going to call the activists, who lead governments to make policies not based on the market or on merit, but of course based on some ideological view about anything that is sourced from our forest, from our forest lands. To anyone, in any order, I don't mind.
Hello, so again, Natasha from the Australian Forest Association. I do think it's a really important question because as far as sustainable forestry goes, it's not just about providing biomass per se for a future energy supply. It is all the products that our industry provides to be put into that bioeconomy. There is a lot of pressure on the forest industry to be a solution to many high-emitting type products such as construction material and what have you as well. But a lot of policymakers are asking the question of where will these future trees come from, and a lot of current policies is based a little bit on ideology. So when we think about the Paris Agreement, we all want to achieve the 1.5 by 2050. It can't be an either-or debate. Everyone's going to be thinking about all things at once to actually achieve, if we are going to get to 1.5 by, or warming by 1.5 by 2050. So it's really important that I think that there is this diversity of conversation when we think about how we're going to get there, when we think about the solutions to the challenge that we currently face. And forestry needs to be better understood, I think, by all policymakers across all regions, technically speaking.
Fernando, you emphasised in your contribution the importance of collaboration, and I know in terms of all the great things your company is doing, you talk a lot about partners. Are you including, when you say that environmentalists and activists and people who you reach out to and try to work closer with to better educate the population, but them for better outcomes?
Yes, and thanks for bringing this point, Joe. I think this is a very important one. But first of all, I think it's important to emphasize, I really don't like the idea of we are right and they are wrong. I really don't like that. Because at the end of the day, we need to dialogue. So we need to open our minds to different views. And this is the reason why I think we still have a lot of, we still have room to improve, of course, what we do. I understand that it's our responsibility to educate people about what we do, and because of that I started talking today about what we do. It's farming, it's not reforestation, but at the same time, because we do and we are competent in growing trees, we're also able to conserve native areas. Because today it's interesting, we are, as I have already said, we are facing a big war. And we need some bio-solutions to face the problems that we have today. But where is bio? This is the problem. Where the bio will come from. So at the end of the day, we need to develop sustainable models in order to develop renewable solutions. So in our case, every tree that we harvest today, we planted 6 years in advance, as I said. And today, just to give you an idea, we are planting 1.2 million trees per day. 1.2 million trees every single day. So I think this model of having technology applied to develop a better planted trees model, together with working with the protection of the native trees, at the end of the day, has shown to us, after 5 decades of plantations, that we have been able to increase our productivity without, at the end of the day, we have been able to produce more using less natural resources. Just to give you an example of that. When we started our plantations in Brazil at Suzano about 6 decades ago, the productivity average in terms of cubic meters per hectare per year was around 21 at that time, at 60s, 1960s. Today our average is around 40. So we're able to produce the double of the pulp that we produce today using half of the land. If we wouldn't do that, it would be needed more area to produce those products that are important, again, to give alternatives to the world. And it's important to emphasize as well that across our plantations and conserve the native areas, the model that we have today takes carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. So locking away in the biomass and also in the soil. Just to give you an example, during the last 2 years, in from 2020 until 2022, we have removed 22 million tons of CO2 from the atmosphere using this model. And we have, as you said, I like your explanation about the model that we're using there. We have 3,000 smallholders working with us. So we're including people in the system. So that at the end of the day, again, we have to dialogue with different views in order to improve what we're doing. But I think we have some real examples of the positive model that we have developed during the last 50 years. And also, we have today, we're also generating employees, opportunity jobs, of course. We have today 42,000 employees working with us. So at the end of the day, if you sum the opportunities that we have through renewable wood, plus jobs, plus working with farmers, smallholders, farmers, plus removing dioxide from the atmosphere, I think we have a good model. This is the point. But we're open to discuss with others that have different views. This is the way we can improve all time. And just one last point. We are 100% certified by FSC and also PEFC. So that brings, I think, that raised the bar all time in order to develop our system. Thank you.
Thanks, Fernando. Yes, and I know I'd like to touch on at some point the social side of your plan, lifting people out of poverty or more work for people. That's very admirable and something we should be talking more about in our broader communities. But I absolutely agree with you. We can fight one another or we can work collaboratively to get the outcomes, and no one gets an absolute win, but we find an equilibrium, if you like. Dina, can I ask you how you see that from an international perspective, working with the people with different views working together to accommodate one another to ensure that we get good environmental outcomes, but also good economic and social outcomes?
I think it's really great to have the collaboration for international, but it must be remembered we should implement them best on the national level too, because some of the countries also have a different kind of definition of deforestation, like Indonesia with the EVAL standard, and yeah, I think we should try to adapt to the national.
Thanks, Tina. You don't have a lot of forestry in Mauritius per se. Obviously, it's a very small landmass, but you have. We spoke earlier about social tensions, whether it be about capital investment from other countries, foreign investment, land use conflicts in such a small nation. Would you say there's a high level of collaboration in your own country between those who have different views about land use?
Yes, what I can say is that I have observed that during the past 10 years, there is a lot of deforestation. For example, because when a country is developing,
and there is a climate change also is affecting. Before 10 years, there was a suburb of the mountain, Mauritius. Now all this suburb is removed, and there is construction of house because people are not living near the sea after the tsunami. They are all running up to the mountain. So all the houses is going to build at the top of the mountain, and deforestation, and you can see when there is activity there because they are getting not hot also, the climate is good. So all these things is going. So I think it should have, even the farmers is moving because of the water. They know that at the mountain it's good, no irrigation, everything, the soil is more better, all these things. So this is the main problem, and I think they should have a laws that to preserve this forest, because we must, as a farmers, we must know that the forest also produce food. A lot of fruits and foods comes from the forest, just like animal also. There is deer, there is all this kind of animals that we can go to hunting, this or there. And there is another aspect also that is deforestation, is the poverty. Many people, there is an island in Madagascar which is a lot of forest. This forest is, even no one has been inside this forest. There's a lot of resources, and these companies, there's big companies, China people go there, they do deforestation because they are looking for the natural resources, especially in Africa. They are looking for the natural resources, and they go to the forest because there's a lot of natural resources in the forest. So they go, they will exploit this diamond and all this wood. I know in Madagascar there is red wood, ebony wood. So there is big company like Yamaha musicians, they are doing for bayonets, they are cutting the trees, and this, they are giving the money to the poor person. This person is going to just like a robbery and take this, cut this tree, and then they came and then factor it, and then they give the, even there is a law that not to because it's poor, then they give the money, bribes, and they can export it. So all these things, I think it's have a contribution. We have to see all these things, and rules should be more solid.
Yeah, Natasha, we're all in screaming agreement, I think, that there has to be we have to be working with those with different views to get outcomes which are both beneficial for the natural environment and the economy. But you and I both know that in Australia that can be very difficult. And activists who work against our industry don't take too much notice of the truth in some of this debate, but are driven by ideology, often funded by high wealth individuals, and there is there's not much give and take from their perspective. Can you just share some of your experiences dealing with those activists in Australia, and any advice you can give to both the Australian industry, which you have the opportunity to do all the time, of course, but others who might be facing the same challenges?
Yeah, and I think it does come back down to this education piece. For a lot of policymakers, forestry is very challenging for them to understand, and you know, when we think about election cycles, we see policies change from government to government, and focuses change, and that really impacts the sector for forestry, because you do need that policy certainty. You do need to know, particularly for farmers, they need to know if they plant those trees today, will the laws change in 30, 40 years' time where they won't be able to harvest those trees. So I think for policymakers, and as we look towards why are we doing this, this has been driven for us to have a better future for particularly younger people as well, where we can reduce those carbon emissions, change to an economy that is no longer just a single focused economy where you use a product once and it is abandoned, but you're actually thinking about that circular bioeconomy. We do not have the resources where we can waste it. We do need to reuse them, and we need to think about that renewability and sustainability. And what was your word again now? Innovability now as well. And that comes down to, again, which I was talking a little bit before around terminology and definitions. Locally, we need to have a better understanding is what does it mean with deforestation? The sustainable management of forests is not deforestation, and that is a thing that those activists actually promote in Australia in particular, that sustainable forestry is deforestation, and that is not the case. When we do need to think about this urbanisation, people do need to live somewhere. So we need to clear land to have people live in a certain place. We need to think about, well, how do we increase forestry somewhere else? We need to think about that land use change as well. But we need to be thinking about all these things all at once. And really for us, and our government actually released a report just yesterday. It's from the Climate Change Authority. They have started thinking about, what more can be done around the sequestration for trees and all the rest. Really a strong focus for agroforestry and farm forestry in that report. That is a good thing, and that's through the education piece that AFPA really has been doing with a lot of our governments across all jurisdictions and also government agencies. So I think agencies, I'm going to give AFPA a plug here. We do need to have there an EBA, for instance. We need to be here at the COP. We need to be thinking about these things, and we need to be educating. And because the companies are doing it, they're doing it in a really strong way. The farmers are also doing it. The youth are thinking about it. But our policy decision makers need to really come to the table and have these more robust conversations.
Thanks, Natasha. It's very interesting. I'll just go to the Australian context again for just a moment and pick up on Natasha's last point there. In Australia, we could all see for many years that the government's not going to meet its decarbonisation aspirations, focusing almost entirely on electricity generation and a reduction in the use of fossil fuels in Australia. We do need those other solutions, including carbon capture, whether it be in its natural form or from fossil fuels. But we do see a turning of the debate in Australia, and of course we welcome that, and in fact we take some credit for that. We've got the government now subsidising the plantation of production trees, including on farmland for agroforestry. It's a welcome thing. The government has now allowed us to enter the carbon market for the carbon we sequester on those plantations. But we're suddenly seeing government also realising that more can be done in other areas associated with the forestry sector, including biomass and bioenergy. But we also see in Australia, and it's just one example, I'm sure, of many around the world, including the Inflation Reduction Act in the US, which I would say is distorting capital markets in the renewable sector. But while we're very pleased, our government in Australia is spending just say $300 million in assisting our efforts to become more of the climate change solution. It is investing tens of billions of dollars on wind farms and solar farms, and what people would first think of when thinking about renewable energy and solutions to a transition and a reduction in the use of fossil fuels. Can I ask you in particular, Fernando, what's happening in Brazil? Is there a growing recognition of the role we can play there, or are they much different circumstances?
Unfortunately, I have to say that we are in about the same conditions if you compare with Australia. When you talk about renewable energy, what comes to the mind of the people in general, we're talking about solar and wind, and we do not recognize the power of biomass, renewable biomass. So it's a big challenge for us, but I think working together again with IBA, with our association, between different companies, I think we are moving to another better stage, in my opinion. And it's not only about, I think it's important to emphasize that what we can provide to the society, and I think this helps a lot, this debate, in my opinion. When you talk about renewable energy, I think we have some, let's say, important competitors, solar, wind, they are good sources, of course. But when you talk about other biorenewable solutions, then we are in a very good shape. Normally, I like to say that we are in the right side of the equation because, for example, consider our case, as we are the biggest producers of pulp in the world, we are also the biggest producers of lignin that comes with the tree. About 50% of our trees are cellulose and 30% are lignin. So we can use the same tree to produce renewable energy, as we do in our mills today. So our mills, most of our mills are self-sufficient in energy production, bioenergy that comes from lignin, from the trees. And we also sell energy to the grid, to the national system. So we're able to deliver renewable energy to mainly to our neighbors, to our to other players in the country. Renewable energy already. But also we are developing, for example, solutions coming from nanocellulose. And we have today a partnership with, used to be a startup, but it's not a startup anymore, called Spinova in Finland, where we are producing sustainable textile fibers coming from nanocellulose. This is a breakthrough, because as you know, textiles are one of the most important source of pollutions in the oceans today. If we're able to develop a new solution that can provide a better and more sustainable textile fiber, this will bring impact to the world. So again, it's not only about bioenergy, but about other bioproducts that we can offer to the society, coming from high level of technology applied to planted trees.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I can't help but take some amusement from extreme activists who glue themselves to the road or to a post or whatever using a petroleum product called glue. And often these campaigners don't seem to understand where their products are coming from. And if they're serious about ridding our environment of plastics, they need to turn to us, right? This is just common sense to those of us who understand the industry, and a number of your emerging product lines seek to offset other products that aren't so good for the environment. Do you have something that you'd like to add on this issue about the replacement of petroleum or other products by sustainable forestry products? And you share our frustration that it's very difficult to get people to understand or accept that ours is a renewable product.
Yeah, so recently I participated in one of the workshops about palm oil, and palm oil issue is really a big deal in Indonesia, and especially toward the EUDRR. And I found out that it affects on the small farmers, because to get the certificate for the conservation, it's about like $1,000, which is it's really a big number for the small farmers, and actually it will affect to young people too, because they have like a perception about, oh, if I'm working in forestry sector, it's too much of regulation and bureaucracy. Why I should working in here? I think I will work in a startup. I think I'm working in the office, which is more bureaucracy. It's not that really a big deal in here. And I think in here it's the roles of the policymaker. It's really important, especially to adapt to every national vision and mission, and yeah, to support every youth people to get the great jobs.
Now, is there anyone, Goncham, did you want to add something to that? I can see you
Yes,
readying yourself to do so.
Yes, what we are doing also in Mauritius days, just like you mentioned for the fiber, we are taking the banana trees. Once we cut the banana trees, instead of going away, we take it and we remove this, we produce fibers. And so also we have a lot of pineapple, and then we use these leaves to do the fibers. There is also the coconut trees. The seaside, there is a lot of coconut trees, and this is also reused, and we cut this to make cocoa peat. For example, in the hydroponic system, we use this for the substrate to grow plants. So all these things we can, and the farmers, it's getting more money, it's get income. So we are looking for just like renewing these things, what we grow, and how we can reuse it, and we can make money with that.
It's a very interesting perspective from you, because I know that your country, for electricity generation, traditionally has relied on liquid fuels,
Yes.
which is, it would never be our first preference in environmental terms. You have a very small land mass and therefore limited opportunities on solar, although I know you're doing a lot of rooftop and solar. But the biomass is obviously one of very few alternatives for a small island state like Mauritius.
But we have another opportunity also from the sea, because the sea wave is another energy. So we can produce electricity with the sea wave also. So we have to work on this also, do research and find the way how we can, because there is also, we must consider that we are a small island, we are surrounded and there is a lot of cyclone. And the cyclone now with the climate change is becoming very strong. So it's during more time, because last year there is it goes cyclone only 3 weeks. The whole Indian go to Mauritius, and it's go to South Australia, Madagascar, and it's Malawi, and then came back and go to Malawi. So it's a lot of destruction, even for forests, house, all these things.
We haven't said anything much about sovereign capability, which I'd like to go to, but I just want to give our audience an opportunity to ask questions if anyone has one. Because we are drawing to a close, we're going to wind up at 5 o'clock. Just make the point that in Australia, one of the things people don't think sufficiently about is how reliant we are on sovereign capability for wood-based products. And of course, if we don't produce more in Australia, we become increasingly reliant on other jurisdictions which don't follow always our world's best sustainable practices. Fernando, you've had these experiences too, I would assume, about on sovereign capability. The capacity in Brazil, for example, to produce things from within Brazil rather than rely on imports from other jurisdictions which might not follow the sustainable practices your company doesn't, just as our member companies do.
Yeah, in our case, as you know, we have some very good environmental conditions in Brazil, and also it's not only about Suzano, but it's about the forest sector in Brazil have developed, I would say, high standard levels of silviculture practice there. So the wood that we're producing in Brazil today are almost sufficient to our business, and we're also exporting to other places. But I have been studying this wood production in the world, mainly during this year, and we know there is a lack of wood all over the world. So I think again we need to put a lot of attention in developing new alternatives to produce more using less natural resources. Otherwise, the pressure over different countries will be bigger for sure. So I know even in Australia, I think we were reducing a bit the exportation of wood, if I'm not wrong, but or stable. In Brazil, we're trying to increase our exportation of wood, and rather than import. And but our industry in Brazil is expanding a lot, so the pressure is becoming high. It's becoming big as well. So this is we need to find a balance.
Well, I'll invite Natasha to talk about supply and demand in Australia, where our circumstances are quite different. Natasha, we have an interesting story to tell.
Yeah, and sadly in Australia, particularly for plantation, our plantations are in decline. I mean, we don't have, land prices are very expensive in Australia. So when we think about other land use competition, it's easier for a farmer in particular to, grow traditional type of crops or, raise cows or sheep and what have you, because it is, for a farmer in Australia, the idea of, planting a plantation, it just takes a long time to grow that. And so, governments do need to think about how they incentivise getting more trees in the ground quicker. And it's like the point I made before, the World Bank is telling us that by 2050, timber supply or timber demand is going to increase fourfold. Where will that timber come from? And it's really important that decision makers start to think about that in a really serious way, because it can lead to those unintended consequences of deforestation in those jurisdictions, as Joel was saying, that do not have those same environmental standards that the countries that we're representing have. So I think it's really critical that as important as renewables are, solar and wind and other types of renewables, people need to start thinking about those nature-based solutions, forestry in particular, and how we will, what future policies will ensure that it incentivise the right actions in order to actually ensure that we can have that product by the 2050, because it is really challenging. And I'm just going to add also, I guess the other thing is we're talking about why are we doing this? Because of climate change. We see the impact on climate on our forests already, and we haven't touched on that today. But when we think about putting trees in the ground, it's also about managing and growing those trees, and with increased fire risk, pest and disease, you know, we already see challenges around the world for our forests, and I think we do need to think about you know, how we can actually instigate better forest management, and this is where companies like Suzano and you know, the fabulous companies that we work with in Australia actually come to the table. Policymakers want them at the table to understand what more can be done and how will those solution pathways be found. We need those experts at the table.
And of course, Benjamin, yes, please.
What I want to say is that forest is something for farmers. It's essential because there is a scientist from India, Subhas Palekar. He spent 35 years in the forest and its laboratory to see how can these plants grow in the forest without fertilizer, without water, and it's growing. And we farmers, we are putting a lot of fertilizer, and we are doing so. You see what the microbes there is, and they do the research and find that this microbe can be cultivated. So then they develop the zero budget natural farming. He takes with the cow dung, cow urine, and we take because this is that there's more microbe in the intestine of cow, and especially in the desi cow from India, and they extract this cow dung, and we use this cow dung, and we can fertilize 1 hectare of land with 25 liters of cow dung and cow urine with a multiply. I do it in Mauritius, and it worked very well because it is the same concept than in the forest. We put this and we put the mulching and we protect the soil, and it's worked very well. So it reduces the fertilizer, chemical fertilizer. This is a model that have been taken from the forest. There is a lot of scientists is going to the forest. They take the microbe from the forest, and they are doing the how we call it the fertilizer, biofertilizer from the forest. So all these things is coming from the forest because there is a plant, and the living microorganism in the soil is present in the forest, not in the where we are cultivating. And we know we farmers, because we have to produce food, we use a lot of fertilizer, and there's also that we want to have the food security. We have to feed the world, and it's. But we have to also, because if there is no forest, we cannot do anything. So it's very important for that.
Thank you. Can I say, Fernando, that I've noted that your company was the first company in the world to produce pulp and paper entirely from eucalypt product. Is that right? And that occurred a year before I was born. And you can see that I'm fairly old. I'm an old man. So I congratulate Patrick to your company for that magnificent achievement. And I'm going to have to wind up in a moment. And I think we've got some gifts for our panelists, but I just want to go back to where we began. I think we've agreed today, not surprisingly, that the forestry sector has an enormous role to play in meeting the climate change challenge, and can play a greater role with the right government policy settings. And we see that capital inflows are going to places where it might not necessarily produce the best outcomes long term, but where it produces the most popular outcome. I think we can agree on that. I think we can also agree, though, that we can't afford conflict. We need consensus and collaboration, and we need to work with those who might not entirely share our view, and maybe not secure everything we want out of that conversation, but certainly secure an outcome that's good for our natural environment, and it's good for social outcomes as well, and certainly good in addressing climate change. I think the other thing we touched on very important is that our industry is not just a solution to the climate change challenge, it's a solution to the environment more generally, particularly in terms of the displacement of plastics and other products that aren't good for the environment and can be replaced by our beautiful renewable products. So I thank you all for your contribution. Sarah, are you going to come forward? Oh, I have the gifts. Oh, I do too. And these great Aussie Tim Tams and this beautiful facility provided by Longy Solar, thank you. Did not melt while we were talking. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. You want to share? Thank you. Thank you very much. So again, thank you, our panellists. I think all those who came along to listen to what they had to say, maybe a little bit what I had to say, maybe maybe too much. Again, thanks Longy Solar for the facility. It's been very kind. You've been great hosts. And can I say, again, on behalf of the Australian Forest Products Sector Association, we are very proud and feel fortunate to have hosted this event today. So thanks for coming along.